In the Caspian region, we invest across many sectors from infrastructure, roads, power, generation, natural resources, but we spend most of our time as an institution investing in the private sector, which is small and medium-sized enterprises, manufacturers, retailers, and investing in banks that lend to even smaller businesses, so micro businesses, anything from small farmers and taxi drivers and corner shop owners to service providers and individual consultants. So across the board we invest and focus mainly on the private sector. In the region as a whole, pretty good interest. I think investors have to be of a certain size and have a certain appetite for more exotic destinations, but certainly in countries like Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan that have a very vibrant and over the last decade or so quickly growing economy, there's been a great deal of interest from foreign direct investors in those economies because they have the size to attract larger investors. An example of this is Holcim Cement in Azerbaijan, where EBRD owns a 10% stake. It's the leading cement producer in the country for the last 10 years and has really been instrumental in developing the building materials sector across the board. And there are now 3 other companies that are manufacturing cement that are locally owned in Azerbaijan. And that tells you something of the impact of that foreign direct investment on local investors and on local businesses as well. It depends on the sector. Obviously, for infrastructure deals, the tenors of our loan tend to be quite long, but for a typical medium-sized corporate deal in the Caspian region, we'd be looking at between 4 to 7 years tenor on a loan with a grace period of which would depend on the implementation, the technical implementation of the project. It's had quite an impact. It's had an impact on confidence of consumers in the first place, and that's directly impacted on many of our clients. But I think in the long run, it's given a taste of things to come as oil revenues will inevitably decline, and as the economies see the necessity to diversify. It's given the leaders of those countries and the business people as well a real taste for what's coming in the future, that they can't rely on their hydrocarbon resources, and they've become even more serious about diversification and the reform that's necessary to effect that diversification. So I think in the long run it will be very positive. I think as far as how they see European markets in the Caspian region, I think they see their long-term future as exporting to the European Union and perhaps to Turkey as well, which is also a large market on the doorstep of the Caspian. Markets to the south are of less interest. I think if you look at a manufacturing company in the Caspian, if you look at, for example, a food producer, and you look at what standards they're aiming at, that are perhaps more stringent than their own local standards. They're looking at EU standards in order to open export markets for themselves. That's their ambition, at least, to be able to do that. So I think they look at Europe as an extremely important market for the future. It might not be an important market now, because I think largely non-oil exports are going north to Russia and to some extent west as far as Turkey. But the ambition is that they will be able to penetrate markets in the European Union as well in the future. How's the crisis in Ukraine and Russia affected the Caspian region? I think it's affected the confidence of the people again, and the concerns about the governments in the region about how to respond to that crisis as well. But I don't think it's had a direct economic effect other than through the oil price. It's affected confidence amongst consumers more than anything else. The Caspian region has all sorts of untapped potential. There are a lot of opportunities in import substitution. The devaluations that we've seen over the last few months in many countries of the Caspian have really made exporters and the burgeoning export sectors in everything from light manufacturing to food production and to agribusiness have created all sorts of opportunities for those local producers to export. Import substitution is an important function of that. As the imports become more expensive, they're being substituted with local imports. And these are not complicated deals to structure. These are quite obvious. If you've got access to finance and you've got the right sort of entrepreneurial spirit and a supportive government that's created good regulation for those businesses, you can really develop very, very quickly your non-oil sector and diversify extremely quickly. If those 3 things can come together over the next few years, it really will be a very attractive investment destination throughout the whole of the Caspian Basin.